Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Forensic Focus. I'm your host, Charles Amodio with FAZ Forensics. At FAZ Forensics, we specialize in business valuation and forensic accounting. At FAZ, when answers matter, FAZ delivers. Today with my colleague, Sophia Hourihan. Sophia, how are you today?
Doing well, Charlie. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. It was finally beautiful weather out. I'm here in Boston, so it's always good when we get a nice day out with the unpredictable weather in New England. But I got outside, saw some friends, and recharged for another work week.
That's great. That's great. Any good news? Any good news that you want to share with us?
Good news. I actually do have some good news. So I finished my CPA journey back in December. I passed my last exam the past week, actually. I finally got my certification. So I'm officially licensed and in that chapter behind me.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. I remember that process. That was a long process, and I was glad to get it over with as well.
Yes, that was very exciting. It's a lot of time, but it's definitely worth it.
Are you pursuing any other designations?
Yes, actually, just because I couldn't get enough CPA, I'm studying for my CFE now. So I actually just got approved for that, and I have to schedule a date probably within the next few weeks. So
CFE, that's a certified fraud examiner, correct?
yes, certified fraud examiner. So that's a little more, not more relevant, but very relevant to what we do in forensic accounting.
Excellent, excellent. So talking about forensic accounting, types of cases that you work on, why don't you give us a flavor for some of the cases types of cases that you work on?
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of do a mix between both insurance and forensic work. Insurance work, we handle a lot of business interruption losses, which is something that I find really interesting because you could do something as far as helping a small business owner who owns a restaurant who maybe had a flood or got broken into for a period of time, and that feels really meaningful to help recover their losses and work directly with the insured and the insurance company to kind of figure out an amount that would make them whole again. And then you also get on the other side of that some really big cases with the business interruption, like a big biology lab that is really complex in developing different manufacturing processes for pharmaceuticals. And that is something that teaches you about a whole new industry that you never knew anything about. So I think on both ends, whether it's a small business or a really big corporation, you can learn so much. So I love the insurance side. And then I also do the forensic side, which is a lot more dealing with attorneys and litigation matters, which can also be a wide range of things, whether it's a small family that thinks that maybe they have a son-in-law stealing from them if they have a big estate, or a corporation or a public corporation that deals with public funds, and that can feel really meaningful as well. So I think the variety of work keeps it really exciting and new. So yeah, that's a bit of a long answer for what we do.
So as far as like business interruption, what are some of the challenges that you may deal with on business interruption cases?
I think a big challenge, probably more of the smaller ones, is just a lack of information that we receive. So sometimes, we have to work with companies that aren't using sophisticated accounting softwares. They might just be keeping their books, by hand still. So it can take a lot of communication, and I don't want to use the creativity because it's not, but just trying to find a way to an answer without having the information you would like to have. So that's something we deal with all the time. And I think when you establish a relationship with your client, it can be a lot easier to get through that.
Understood. I know one of the challenges that I've dealt with on business interruption cases is projecting revenues and projecting sales. And coming out of COVID, sales have been up and down for a variety of industries. And why don't you talk about that a little bit? See if you have you run into that a little bit in some of the cases you've worked on?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, COVID has been a big issue. Because usually when we, project revenue, we're using the prior 2 to 3 years. We're at a point now where it's really a baseline, because if we're looking 3 years back, that's COVID impacted. And then you're also seeing like a ramp up of maybe revenues that have increased because they're coming back from COVID. And it's just hard to see what was normal. But of course, if you go back pre-COVID, that doesn't factor in inflation the way that, the economy has changed and trends have changed. I worked on a golf course once, and golf is one of those industries that went down during COVID, but then really all of a sudden they're booming because it was during COVID. So it's just really hard to kind of consider all of these different industry trends and things that have happened without having a solid baseline to go off of.
Yeah, which is definitely makes it a challenge. Definitely makes it a challenge.
For sure.
And as far as some of the key concepts that we deal with insurance claims and business interruption claims specifically is discontinued expenses, and that's always when we're dealing with an insured, dealing with an insurance company, trying to explain what that concept means. And I don't know,
Right.
what are your thoughts on discontinued expenses and what it means?
So discontinued expenses is probably the question that I get most from insureds. I think it's really, I understand the struggle with it. So when people, lose revenue and they go down, let's take a restaurant whose pipe bursts. They're instantly just thinking, oh my gosh, I lost all of these sales, which is reasonable for a business owner. That's the first that comes to mind. But sometimes people don't realize that when you're also, losing revenue, you're saving expenses at the time. So if you don't have your customers coming in, then in turn, you're not producing the same amount of, maybe payroll, maybe some of your wait staff isn't working, maybe your utilities are down because you're not operating. So you don't have all the ovens going, the fires, things like that. So ultimately, you are going to save money because you're not incurring the associated revenue. But it's difficult for people to understand that because they still are paying their fixed expenses. They'll come back with, I'm paying, but I'm still paying my rent and I still paid utilities. And it's okay, yes, you probably still paid utilities, but maybe not as much. So that's when we have kind of the discretionary piece of it where we have to say, okay, maybe we'll take 50% of your utility as saved. And you really have to analyze a profit and loss statement and see kind of the trends of the expenses. But that's a big hurdle to explain, understandably so, because it can be an emotional thing, when you're losing money in your business and you don't instantly think, I'm saving money.
Right. Yeah. And like, I know some of the expenses that are pretty, discontinued expenses is somewhat synonymous with variable expenses, right? So, restaurant, their cost of goods sold is typically a good discontinued expense because, they're not buying, they're not purchasing all the product they use to prepare foods, and they're not purchasing maybe liquor or alcohol or things along those lines. Supplies,
Sure.
right? Supplies is typically a discontinued expense.
Yeah, supplies is a big one. And payroll is something that we usually have to dig into a little further because on one end, while employees are working, the owner still might be paying their employees because when they do come back up and running, they can't have afforded to not pay their employees and in turn maybe not have them come back. So payroll is something we usually analyze separately, and have a conversation or interview with the owner and see what happened with those employees. So there's some considerations there.
And payroll is typically a big chunk of the operating expenses. So yeah, that's something we really need to dive in a little bit further with. So what about one of the concepts that come up, like you were talking about rent and stuff like that. What if you have a business that they can't use their building and they have to look for other space temporarily? Typically that goes under the extra expense claim. Have you dealt with any of those?
For sure. So extra expense is something that also can be hard to get your head around, because it's any expense that's been incurred that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the loss. So sometimes if you're completely kicked out of your facility because it's been flooded or vandalized or a fire has occurred, then you might look for temporary space that you have to pay for, and that's an additional expense that you've incurred because of the loss. So that's something we analyze on a separate basis. I'm trying to think of other examples of extra expense that we get frequently. Sometimes people have to travel extra to get to a new facility that they wouldn't have. And in order to keep their employees happy, the company has to pay them for extra mileage and things like that. So those could be extra expenses, but that's also a part of your policy that not everybody has. So it's an important thing to consider when you're getting insurance, I'd say.
And any interesting cases that you've been working on recently?
Interesting cases. I've recently on the forensic side, I've had a few public fund related cases. So a big nonprofit corporation, the CEO was not handling their RFP process correctly. So typically in a nonprofit, and along with a school or any public corporation dealing with public funds, you have to go through a very formal process when you incur expenses. So you go through a bidding process, and that way, when you get all of your proposals in, you can determine which one is, the best cost for the purpose, and usually it goes through boards. So I had a CEO who was kind of putting aside this formal process that you do of requesting proposals and just giving, contracts to her people she knew and related parties. So that was something that was really interesting because it's not a direct financial, stealing or something like that we deal with. It was more of you're kind of rigging a process of best practice, and it caused a lot of harm to the company. So it's good to deal with different things that aren't always just a financial fraud related matter.
Sure. Yeah, there's typically a bidding process when they're looking to approve a vendor for let's say you're
Right.
building an addition onto a building, and you should be sending it out to bid, or you're bringing in somebody to do some maybe some training or things like that. That's something you should probably put out to bid, right?
Exactly. And that just makes sure everything is fair and that your donors still have trust in your company. If you lose trust as a company that relies on donations, then that has a huge impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where obviously a lot of your funds are coming from, to keep
Right.
you
So it's
operating,
important
correct?
to have someone you trust in that
Yeah.
position, and when there's people in these positions that you think you can trust, and they, you know, I do like working on cases like that where it feels like you are helping kind of a more general public, or funds that people think are being put in good hands. So
So just to segue a little bit here, what do you like to read?
it's funny, I used to be such an avid reader growing up. My parents would have to come in my room and tell me to, turn off my little reading light so I could go to bed. But since I think I've gone through, school and then my master's and then finishing my CPA exam, all of my reading material has been financial, which is not that interesting. Um, so I think recently, now that, once I finish the CFP, I'm back into reading.
Yeah. What do you typically like to read?
Ooh, mystery, horror, true crime. I love all of that stuff.
Do you have any favorite authors?
Ooh, mm, not that come to mind, but ask me again in a year and I'm sure I'll have more of a library that I've built up.
Okay. Excellent.
Right now it's
Excellent.
been Becker.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Help you pass the CPA exam for sure.
Yes, yes.
Good. So now with FAZ for only a few months now, and you know, what do you like about FAZ? What brought you to FAZ, and what do you like, and where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, I love FAZ. So I came from I started my career in audit in a big public firm, and then I went to another forensic accounting firm that was also really large. And FAZ is definitely the smallest firm by far that I've worked for, but I really like that because you can establish relationships so quickly. And like you just said, I've only been here a few months, but it feels like I've been here for a year. I feel like I've been here for a long time because I already feel like I've developed really close relationships with everybody. And that's kind of the the benefits of being with a small firm is growing really quickly and learning from people really easily because everyone's so accessible. So I would say the accessibility has been huge. Just even being able to talk to you, we work together a lot and we talk almost every day, and that's just not something you can get at all big firms. So culturally, I think it helps both the work, but also just relationship building and keeping your employees generally happy when you feel like you're cared about beyond just being a number.
No, I hear you. It kind of goes along with our core values. And, that's what we try to preach, about our core values and how important, our firm culture is. And, obviously, I think you've done a great job fitting into our firm culture. Every firm has a different type of a culture. Obviously, it's at larger firms, you may not, they may have a separate and distinct culture. I don't know. We feel like we've established a pretty specific culture at FAZ, and I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It's very friendly and family oriented. I know that family is a buzzword that people use when they talk about culture and they'll say stay away. But this actually does feel like a family where you can, communicate with your partners about what's going on, and everyone cares about your personal life too. The work-life balance is something that I haven't experienced anywhere else. I feel like when you all, talk about work-life balance, you really mean it. And it's great because for me, I mean, kind of going off on a different tangent, I've been getting into running recently, and I signed up for a half marathon and triathlon. I love doing things like that. And that's something that at my prior firms, I just actually felt as though I didn't have the time to do, because, you're working these crazy hours. And here, I just feel like I have the flexibility to be more of myself outside of work. And then that brings me into a better mental space when I'm at work and I feel more productive. So I think you guys like harboring that culture and making that really accepted and in a genuine way, it just makes like my life better as a whole, as a person outside of work, and makes me a better employee. So you guys are doing good things.
So you mentioned things you like to do outside of work, running. I'm not really sure that would be at the top of my list, but so what, besides running and things like that, is there any other things you like to do outside of work?
I love being outside. I love hiking. My boyfriend and I, we do a lot of that together, which is really great. We just got a dog as well. So usually on the weekends, you'll catch us skiing if it's the winter, hiking over the summer, and just being with our families. We're both really close to our families. They live in the same area, South Shore, Massachusetts, which is great. So I love that, traveling and being outside and just really like living life, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, we live actually, funny enough, with my sister and her boyfriend as well. So there's the four of us, and we all try and do as many fun things as possible, whether we go play pickleball on the weekends or we all go to the gym together. So just staying active. That's really important, especially
Yeah.
sitting down all day.
Is there anything that we don't know about you that we should know? You want to tell us
Ooh,
about?
thinking of like a fun fact. So I actually, aside from my like accounting and athletic interests, which are more streamlined, I actually am a big Broadway junkie. I love Broadway. My parents and I would go all the time when we were growing up. I know like every word to every song. And I did a lot of Broadway programs growing up. So I was in a lot of plays, which, probably isn't traditional for like an accountant style personality, but it's just something that makes me really happy. I think it's fun.
Okay, so I definitely learned something new today.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And so as far as you mentioned your family and everything like that. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up right in between Boston and the Cape in a town called Marshfield. So it was a little beach town. We had 5 beaches that we could bike ride to. So that was very much, kind of my childhood, getting up, biking to the beach, taking walks along the beach even longer. So I think that's where I like my kind of outdoors time is just from growing up that way.
Excellent. Excellent. And then, you know, after high school, you obviously went to college and you went to UMass,
Mhm.
correct?
I did. I went to UMass Amherst. I had such an awesome experience there. I actually rode there. So I would wake up, at 4:30 every morning, get on the river, no matter what the temperature was. And I was in an 8 with a bunch of girls that became really close friends of mine. And that was just a great experience to have through college, being part of athletics. It keeps you really disciplined. And I just had such a great experience at UMass. I got my master's there as well. I couldn't get enough. So
Do you get back very often for alumni events, or?
yeah, sometimes I do. I visit a lot. I actually visited the other weekend. It was a friend's birthday, so we all went out there. And so, yeah, I love it. It's kind of how
Good, good. Well, Sophia, I think I just want to thank you for giving us a chance to get to know you a little bit better, and look forward to the continued relationship with FAZ, and keep up what you're doing, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Charlie.
All right, have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay, you too.
Bye bye. Bye now.